in Christmas 1999. I was in Jerusalem, and the eve before Christmas Eve, I watched the sunset from the Mount of Olives and looked over at the Temple Mount. And what you've never been there or seen pictures, what you have is this big walled mound on which is this golden domed temple, mosque actually, and there are gates around this in the walls there. One of those gates is called the Golden Gate, and this gate is bricked and mortared over so that nobody can walk through it, because it's said that when the Messiah comes, he'll walk through the Golden Gate. And so they actually have a hospital in Jerusalem specifically for all those people who think that they're Jesus or the apostles or Mary or anything like that. And so there's this, it's a pretty good system. If you wall up that gate, then somebody would really have to be the Messiah in order to walk through the wall. And what's really interesting is, so you have the Temple Mount on one side of this valley and the Mount of Olives on the other. And in this valley is the valley of the shadow of death, because there's all these graves, and this competition to get as close to that Golden Gate with your grave as you possibly can, because when the Messiah comes, everybody wants to be the first one to be risen up, resurrected, and taken into the next world. So you have all these graves kind of jammed up as close as they can possibly up to the wall there, and like the dead are competing competing for to be the first one that the Messiah comes to when the end of the world comes. And in the ancient times, there was a bridge that went from the Temple Mount to the Mount of Olives, so that when the priests came out of the temple to do this ceremony of the burnt offering, like they'd go to the top of the Mount of Olives, walking across the bridge, and they'd have a big altar up there, and they would basically barbecue a cow and the red heifer. And the whole idea of the bridge was so that they wouldn't have to delve into the depths. They wouldn't have to the priests wouldn't have to be dirtied by death and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of weird, because here they are going to go barbecue this, sacrifice this heifer. Crazy. When you think about it, all the sacrifice of ancient times is really, I think, one way of looking at it is this, barbecue was just as delicious back then as it is appreciated today. Anyway, so there I am. It's sunset. I'm looking back on the Temple Mount. Now the Jews don't usually go up on top of the mound. because nobody knows where the temple was, and nobody wants to be to enter into the area of the Holy of Holies, because it was said that in the ancient times, if you were, uninitiated and you entered into the Holy of Holies, that you would be struck dead, and it would be a great sacrilege. So the Jews don't usually go up on the mound itself. What makes the mound is that Abraham is supposed to have offered to sacrifice his son Isaac on this rock on top of this mountain. And so the Muslims have created this really beautiful building around. It's an 8-sided building, mosque, with a dome, golden dome over it, over the supposed rock that Abraham is supposed to have offered to sacrifice his son Isaac. And so most people, it seems, have no clue that this is what the whole Middle East is pivoting on. What happens with this mound? Who controls the top of the Temple Mount? Because the Jews don't, they don't want to mess with the Holy of Holies. They have down off the mound on the other side from the valley. They have this. There's a wall that was built by a long time ago by Herod, and this wall they call it the Wailing Wall, and it's a magnificent temple in and of itself, in that you have there's people getting married there, there's people having their bar mitzvah, their bat mitzvah, their all this, the family ceremonies take place, and it's divided. The Wailing Wall is divided into men on one side and women on the other, but it's open to the sky, and it's a place of atonement, of getting at one with divinity. It's really kind of interesting. And even though the Israeli army, when Israel itself controls that whole region, the top of the Temple Mount is all controlled by the Muslims, who they have their own kind of Muslim police that make sure that nothing untoward is happening on the Temple Mount. Now, my first day there, we walked up on the Temple Mount, my friend and I, and we walked out onto this plaza, way off in a corner, and we just sat there and just felt the vibe and started to feel the desire to meditate. So we're just sitting there meditating, and this Arab gentleman walks up to me and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, I had to come out of my state to talk to the guy. And he said, "Are you praying?" And I thought to myself, meditation, prayer. Sure, yeah, I'm praying. He said, "It's forbidden. You must leave." I'm like, one of the supposedly most holy places on the planet, and because I'm not a Muslim, I'm not allowed to pray here. I'm not allowed to be here. I'm not, it's kind of weird, but whatever. When in Rome. So what ends up happening is, back to the night of the eve before Christmas Eve, I hiked up to the top of the Mount of Olives, which is supposed to be where there's a mosque up there. It's supposed to be where not Abraham, what's his name? Muhammad ascended up into the heavens from there. So it's all really sacred ground, and so I'm sitting underneath this olive tree on the Mount of Olives, and I'm watching the sunset, and I can hear the call to prayer from all the minarets, and I'm thinking, this thing is so convoluted. This whole, struggle around